What is going on, guys? Welcome back. In today's video we're going to build a simple stopwatch application with a graphical user interface in Python. So let us get right into it.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.
And before we get right into the coding, I want to show you what we're going to end up with as a motivation here. And this is the final application. We have a simple stopwatch here. I can start it, then it starts counting. I can stop, I can resume. So basically I can pause, I can resume, I can reset to start from the beginning, and I can do laps as well. I can stop, reset. This also resets the laps, and I can start again. And I'm starting again from lap 1, lap 2, and so on. So this is what we're going to build today. Alright, so for the graphical user interface of the project today, we're going to use the Qt framework, and in particular, we're going to use the PyQt5 module, which is a Python module that allows us to work with Qt inside of Python. In addition to that, we're also going to use the Qt Designer, which is a software that allows us to build graphical user interfaces using drag and drop. So we can just use the mouse to add buttons, labels, text boxes, and all that. We're going to use that tool to create a graphical user interface. We're going to export it as a UI file, and then we're going to take that UI file, load it into Python, and add some functionality to it. That is the plan for today's video. And for that, we're going to start by opening up a command line and saying pip install PyQt5. And you also want to install the Qt Designer. So if you don't have the Qt Designer on your system, just go to your favorite search engine and type Qt Designer download, and then you're going to be able to download and install the tool. It's not too complicated. Once you have it, you open it up and you create a new main window. And you already saw the graphical user interface that we want to build in the preview. Essentially, we just need two labels, one big label for the time that has already passed, then one smaller label for the laps, and then two buttons for start, resume, stop, and the other one is for lap and reset. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a simple label here from the left. We're going to drag it into the window here. We're going to right click, actually not the label, but the window itself, and we're going to say layout vertically, which basically means that we're using a vertical layout for all the elements here. And because of that, we now have the label here in the center. If I add another label below it, you can see that both take up half of the graphical user interface. And then we're also going to add two buttons, push button 1, push button 2. This one has the string by default 00:00:00:00:00:00. Which is basically milliseconds, seconds, minutes, and hours. So we're going to go to the font here, and we're going to increase the font size quite a bit. Maybe to something like 60 maybe. And I would also like to have this centered if that's possible. Where can I say size policy? I'm not sure if I can do that here. I should be able to do that here. There you go. Alignment, horizontal, center. There you go. So now we have the time here. Here I would like to have this way smaller. So I would like to have just lap and then a space and then nothing essentially. And I would like to have a max size for this one. So I would go here, max size, and I would say something like maybe 20, which is the width. I didn't want that. I wanted it for the height. This is actually quite good, but let's go with something like 60 maybe, or maybe something like 80. And maybe we can also have this start at the top left. So if we go to vertical, align top, there you go. So this is what we want to have here. And here we just want to have start, and we just want to have lap. And the lap should be inactive by default. So we don't want this to be active. However, I'm not sure if I did that in the prepared code in Python or actually inside of the Qt Designer. But we can actually do this here, I think, by just saying enabled is false. There you go. Okay. So this is the basic UI. We're now going to also increase the font size here a bit so that we can see what's actually on the buttons. Let's put this maybe to 18. There you go. This one can stay like that. And that is basically the UI. So what we do now in the Qt Designer is we save the result and we go to the programming directory, which should be on a desktop, and then programming, and then Neural 9, Python, current. There you go. And we're going to call this now stopwatch.ui. I'm gonna minimize this and I'm gonna go to my PyCharm application where you can see I have this UI file now. And all we need to do now is we need to load that into Python using PyQt5. And the graphical user interface is basically done from what it looks like. But we're going to add the functionality, obviously. What happens when we click on the buttons? What happens when we click on the buttons after we clicked on other buttons? So, of course, in the stopwatch, we have different states. So we start the stopwatch, and then the button has a different role than before. So it's not starting, it's stopping. And the lap button should be reset if the stopwatch is not running. And if it's running, it should be lap and all that stuff. So we need to take care of all these states, but we're going to start here by saying import time. We're going to also import threading because we need one thread which takes care of the graphical user interface and one thread that takes care of the actual timer. And then we're going to say from PyQt5 import UIC, and then from PyQt5.Qt widgets. And every time I do a tutorial on PyQt5, I say the same thing. Wildcard imports are not recommended, but I'm doing it for the sake of simplicity here. So you should not do something like this in Python. You should always, most of the time you shouldn't do it. I do it here for the sake of simplicity. So this basically just imports everything from the Qt widgets and we can use it right away. And we're now going to say class myGUI is what I'm going to call it. Will extend from the Q main window, which is part of the Qt widgets here. And we're going to say in the constructor, all we're going to do is we're going to call the super constructor myGUI self init like this. And then we're going to say UIC.loadUI, and we're going to load the stopwatch.ui into self. We're going to say self.show. And actually, I think that's it. We're going to now say def main. So we're going to define a main function. We're going to say app equals Q application with an empty list here as an argument. So with no arguments. Then we're going to say window equals myGUI. And we're going to say app.exec underscore. And then, of course, we're going to say the typical line, if underscore name is main, then call main. There you go. So if we run this now, we can see that this is the basic UI that we created inside of Qt. We cannot do really anything with it. If I click on the button, nothing happens. But this is something that we can now work with, because all these elements, if we go to the Qt Designer, you will see that they have object names. So if I click on this, it has the object name label. If I click on this, it has the object name label too. This one is a push button and this one is a push button too. Those names, first of all, I can change them if I want to. I'm not going to do this here for this video, but if you want to, you can change them, and then these names can be used in Python to refer to the individual element. So we can just go self.label and then we can do something with the label. And first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to define a couple of states here. So after showing the UI, what we're going to do is we're going to say self.running is going to be equal to false. Self.started is also going to be equal to false, which is not the same thing, because started means have we started the stopwatch at all, whereas running means is the stopwatch running at the moment. So this is the difference. Then we're going to say self.passed. Those are going to be the seconds passed. And then we're going to say self.previous passed, which basically means we're going to use this for the laps. So we need to know the differences between the individual laps, which is why we need two such values here. And then we also want to have self.lap. The first lap is lap number 1. So we set this to 1 by default. And those are the values that we're going to work with to manage the state and to manage the counting. So let's just go ahead and bind the buttons already, or connect the buttons already to the functionality that they should have, and then we can implement the individual functions. So the self.push button, which is the button at the top, the start button, this button when clicked, so push button dot clicked, we want to connect the clicked event to self.start_stop. This is a function that will handle the start stop functionality. Then we're going to say self push button to clicked, connect self dot lap, and later on it's going to be reset. And then what we want to do is we want to say self dot I would actually like to have a border around the lap label here, so that it's not completely, because if I run this right now, I mean, first of all, I'm gonna get an error because I don't have these functions. But if I run this right now, you can see that the lap is completely stick to the left of the window. I want to prevent this, so I'm gonna add a style sheet, and I'm gonna do this by saying self label _2 dot set style sheet border, and then this is going to be 10 pixels solid transparent. I think this should solve the problem. Of course, we still don't have the function, so let's implement them. We're going to say def start stop pass, and then def lap reset, and we're also going to pass here. There you go. So now you can see there's this gap between the window and the lap label. And now we can start implementing the functionality. And it's not too complicated. You just need to think through all the cases. But once you have it, the code is not too much. What we want to do, of course, when we do start stop is quite simple. We want to say either stop or either start the stopwatch or stop the stopwatch. So we're going to say if self.running, what we want to do is want to say self.running is first of all false. And we also want to say self.push button has to change the text. So if it's running, so if the stopwatch is running, the text is not actually start. It's actually stop or pause or whatever we want to call it. But while the stopwatch is running, the button will have a different text. When we click on stop or pause or whatever we choose to have there, we want to have resume again. So resume is what we want to have because we already started. We are now stopping, and we can resume the stopwatch if we want to. So we're going to say self push button dot set text, and we're going to set this to resume. And then self dot push button 2. Of course, lap doesn't make a lot of sense because push button 2 set text. Lap doesn't make a lot of sense because when it's not running, there's not the functionality to make a lap. So we want to change this one to reset. So we can reset the whole stopwatch here. Otherwise, if it's not running and I click the button, I say self-running equals true. And then I say self.push button, set text to stop, self.push button to set text in case it isn't lap. It's going to be set to lap. And then self.push button to set enabled is going to be true. So basically we're going to change this property here that grays out the button. We're going to click and make it enabled. That is what we're going to do here. And the most important thing probably, we're going to have another function, the stopwatch itself. And this stopwatch function will handle the actual stopwatch, and we need to start it in a separate function, in a separate thread, sorry, so that it runs simultaneously. So we're going to say def stopwatch is going to be another function or method here. And we're going to say threading, thread target stopwatch, or actually self.stopwatch. And we want to start this. So that is the start stop function. For the lap function, maybe let's first of all implement the stopwatch and then do this one here. The stopwatch function is quite simple. We want to start at a certain time, and when we start, we want to start counting, and while it's running, we want to continue counting. And yeah, that's basically want to display the current time. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say start is time, the current timestamp. And if self.started, so if self.started is the case, which means that we already had the stopwatch running, we paused it, and now we're continuing. If that is the case, we have some time that has passed already, and this is the self.passed. Here we're going to store the time that has already passed, and it has to be reset using the reset button, otherwise it stays the same. So we're going to say until now equals self.passed. Otherwise, if it started for the first time, we're going to say until now equals 0, and self.passed, not self.passed, self.started is going to be true for the next time. After all this, while self.running, and remember running is set to true here, while self.running, what we're going to do is we're going to say self.passed is time, so the new current timestamp, this is not the same as this one here. From this, we're going to subtract the start, and we're going to add what has passed until now. And then we're going to set the label text, so self-label set text, and here we want to format the time into hours and into minutes and seconds and all that, and this is going to happen in a separate function. We're going to call this format time string, and we're going to pass here the time passed, and essentially want to say that the seconds are going to be the time passed modulo 60, and the minutes are going to be time passed floor divided by 60, and the hours are going to be the minutes divided floor divided by 60. Floor divided so that we have integers and not some floats. And what we're going to return here is a formatted string that says integer of hours with 2 decimal places, or not 2 decimal places, but with a leading 0. That's actually what this means. So 0 to D means that if I have 12, it's obviously going to display being displayed as 12. But if I have something like 5, it's going to be displayed as 05. So I'm going to add a leading 0 here. Then I also have int mins 0 to D. Then I have int seconds 0 to D, and then I have, and this is now interesting because we also want to have the milliseconds. What we do is we say int of self.passed modulo 1, and we're going to take this times 100. So this is how we get the milliseconds. And essentially, that is the formatted time. So what we're going to do here now is we're going to say self.formatted time string, or format time string. We're going to pass to this the self.pass, so that we just have to pass the seconds. And basically, yeah, that's basically it. And now what we have to do is we need to connect all this with the lap and the reset functionality. So I think actually if I run this now, I'm not sure if that's true, it should already count, but we should not be able to do laps or reset anything here. So as you can see, I can stop, I can resume. Okay, this actually works. The only thing that's missing now is the lap and the reset functionality. Everything else works, as you can see here, which means that we have one last function to do. And here we're going to say if self.running. Of course, this function will have a different functionality if it's running already. And the functionality here is the lap function. So we want to add a new lap. And for this, we're going to say self-label2 set text. And this is a little bit complicated now because we need to add a lot of information to it. First of all, we want to take all the text that's already there. So the previous lap. So for this, we're going to say self.label2 .text, and to that we're going to add a formatted string here, and we're going to say actually want to add I mean, we can do that in the end as well. So let's just say lap self lap, the time passed is going to be self. I think I misclicked something here. Self dot format time string, and we're going to say self dot passed. And then we're going to say, can I actually make a line break here inside of the string? Yeah, I can. Let me just zoom out a little bit. So we have the lap, we have the time passed. Now we also want to have the difference. So I'm going to say the difference, and maybe we want to add a space here as well. The difference between this time and the last time is going to be self.format time string self passed minus self previous passed. This is what we created here as well. And this is actually it. Did I forget something? Difference. Oh, actually I wanted to do, oh yeah, I opened a bracket and I didn't close it. There you go. So this is the lap now. This is just a text. Now we need to also take care of the value. So we're going to say self.lap plus equals 1. Self.previous passed is going to be equal to self.passed. And otherwise, so this is basically just the lap. And otherwise, we want to reset everything, means we're going to set the lap to 0. We're going to reset the labels. We're going to set the second button to not enabled and all this stuff. This will happen in the else branch. So if we're not running and we're clicking that button, it's going to reset everything by saying self.push button set text. By default, it's start. Then we're going to say push button 2 is going to be lap. Then we're going to set the enabled to false. And then we're going to say self label set text is going to be zeros. And then self.label 2 dot set text is going to be just laps. And finally, self.lap is going to be set to 1, not 0. That should actually be it. Now we should be able to use the full functionality of a stopwatch. So I can start it, I can stop it, I can resume it, I can do laps. As you can see here, I can stop, I can reset. And, okay, no. One thing didn't work. When I reset, the time is not reset. So we need to fix that here. And for this, actually, we just need to say, where is it? Lap reset. Self.passed 0, self.previous passed 0. Let's see if that works. There you go. Okay, now it works. So this is how you build a simple stopwatch with a graphical user interface in Python. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting a like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you much for watching. See you in the next video and bye.